From NBC News, this is a special edition of Today, the crash of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17, with Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Today on a Friday morning. Morning to all of you. A somber Friday morning. Obviously, we're learning more and more developments about the shooting down of Malaysia Air Flight 17. Still, though, so many more questions than answers.
Big questions and then heartbreaking little details as we learn more about what happened. Here's what we know, the latest this morning, about the crash of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. There is still no confirmation that any Americans were on board that plane. The U.S. is looking into it, but we don't know yet. For the Dutch, a tragic toll. There were many Dutch passengers, many of them headed to an AIDS conference in Australia. People of all nationalities on board who lost their lives.
Keep in mind, this debris field is in the middle of an active war zone, and it's enormous, 6 square miles. It's filled with wreckage, personal items, passports, suitcases. Eyewitnesses say many of the bodies found were still in their seats, wearing their seatbelts, and lots of questions about the so-called black boxes. The pro-Russian rebels who are in control of that area say they've recovered most of those devices. Now they're deciding what to do with them.
Meantime, the U.S. has offered the services of the NTSB to assist in this investigation, and we do expect to get a decision later today whether officials from that agency will head to this region or not. Let's begin our coverage this morning with NBC's Keir Simmons. He's on the ground in Ukraine this morning. Keir, good morning to you.
Savannah, good morning. Overnight we are hearing that those black boxes have been recovered, but that they may well be in the hands of those pro-Russian separatists who, it's reported, are proposing perhaps to send them to Moscow. There's even an unconfirmed report that they may be saying they will sell them to the highest bidder. And fair warning, some of the accounts from the crash scene are really disturbing. People talking about seeing passengers still strapped into their chairs, still wearing their headphones, and seeing bodies falling from the sky. We're being told that Western investigators will be allowed to get to the scene, Matt and Savannah, because people around the world will be calling for a full inquiry. At one point, they thought there were fewer passengers on board until they realised, guys, that some of the passengers were infants that were being carried on parents' laps, and they hadn't realised and hadn't counted them.
Keir Simmons, thank you very much in Ukraine this morning. Meantime, U.S. officials, of course, have been working around the clock to figure out who is behind this. What does it mean for the U.S. and Russian relations? Was Russia involved at all? All questions that will have to be answered in the coming days. NBC's Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell is on that part of the story. Andrea, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. Ironically, President Obama was on the phone telling Vladimir Putin that he was sanctioning Russia for escalating the conflict with Ukraine when both leaders learned that the Malaysian airliner was down near the Russian border. The White House says Putin's promises in Normandy to reduce tensions with Ukraine have been blatantly violated. 2 Ukrainian military planes shot down this week alone. A military transport plane on Monday, a fighter jet Wednesday night.
Russian-based separatists have shot down more than a dozen planes, helicopters in Ukraine over the past few months.
Putin tried to blame Ukraine's government in Kiev, telling a Russian audience this tragedy would not have happened if there were peace on that land, and in any case if the military activities had not resumed in the southeast of Ukraine. But the conversation between a Russian-backed separatist named Greek and a Russian major, not verified by NBC News, shows them first realizing they'd screwed up and mistakenly shot down a passenger plane. The Russian says, in short, sure as hell, it's a civilian plane. The Ukrainian separatist asks, many people? The Russian replies, a screw-up. Debris fell into people's backyards.
If it is a result of either separatist or Russian actions mistakenly believing that this was a Ukrainian warplane, I think there's going to be hell to pay, and there should be.
Today, the UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting, although Russia can veto any UN action. Even before knowing all the facts, late Thursday night, though, the White House said this crisis in Ukraine is fueled by Russian arms and Russian training for the separatists, again urging Russia to immediately support a ceasefire. As relations are hitting a new low, now the question is, what will Europe do? Savannah?
All right, Andrea Mitchell in our Washington newsroom. Thank you.
Slowly learning a little bit more about the victims of this tragedy. Katie Tur is following that part of the story from Amsterdam. Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt. Schiphol Airport is back up and running as normal today, full of families, tourists, and vacationers. It is the height of vacation season out here. And although the passengers were from all over Europe, Asia, and Australia, most of them were from here in the Netherlands. 173 of the 298 on board were Dutch. And now this country is reeling.
Bouquets and candles outside Nielsjes Flowers in Volendam. Inside, the shop empty and closed with a sign on the door that reads, "On holiday." Owners Nielsje Tol and Cor Schilder were on MH17. On his personal Facebook page, Schilder joked in what would end up being a haunting last post about his Malaysia Airlines flight. Should it disappear, this is what it looks like.
They're 30-year-old. And they earned their vacation. It's a young, funny couple, and always laughing and always together, hard work, and now they're gone.
The Netherlands hit especially hard. 173 of the 298 passengers on board were Dutch, including many headed to the 20th International AIDS Conference in Melbourne, Australia. Among them, former IAS President Joop Lange.
No doctor, no researcher goes to a medical meeting ever thinking that their plane is going to be shot down. This isn't irony. It's cruel, and it's a loss to the scientific world.
At Schiphol this morning, flights were taking off as usual, but the shadow of the crash loomed large, especially for this man about to board today's Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, headed to Kuala Lumpur.
Thought about cancelling my trip, but I couldn't pay anymore.
And in Malaysia, tears and anger once again as families demand answers from not just Malaysia Airlines, but the Malaysian government.
And guys, as you know, I spent a little over a month covering the disappearance of MH370 in Malaysia and Australia. And the images that are coming out of Malaysia right now of family members crying out in pain, looking for answers from both their airline and their government, but getting frustratingly little. Those images are just very eerie, hard to understand, hard to fathom how a tragedy of this size can happen to the same airline in just a matter of months. Back to you.
Katie Tur in Amsterdam this morning, where Flight 17 originated. Katie, thank you very much.
Meanwhile, as this was all unfolding yesterday, a huge story developing in the Middle East.
Absolutely, as if the tensions could get any worse in Gaza this morning. The ground invasion by Israeli troops in the Gaza Strip. It's the first large-scale ground offensive by Israel in Gaza in more than 5 years. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is there. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Natalie. Throughout the night and into today, we have been hearing and seeing Israeli strikes across the Gaza Strip, and this could be just in its early stages. Today, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said he and Israel's defense minister have given direction for a major expansion of the ground offensive.
Tanks and armored vehicles led Israel's charge into the Gaza Strip. They're going in heavy, wary of Hamas's defenses. Israel hasn't been on the ground in Gaza in force in over 5 years, so Israeli troops are marching in cautiously in long lines of infantry. The operation Israel has dubbed Protective Edge began under the cover of darkness overnight. Whoa! With airstrikes, drones, and illumination flares helping to light up targets. Already, there are casualties, nearly all of them Palestinian. Medical officials say several dozen were killed in the first few hours alone.
Israel is also carrying out strikes in the center of Gaza City. This is one of the most densely populated places in the world. But now, few people are coming out of their homes, afraid to be on the streets.
Israel said the goal of this operation is to destroy a network of tunnels dug by Hamas that militants use to sneak into Israel to attack and kidnap Israelis. Israel released footage of what it claims are tunnels being targeted and of Hamas using the tunnels to launch an assault. But Hamas is releasing its own footage of its fighters, defiant, in what look like remarkably well-built tunnels, armed and ready. Israeli officials suggest this operation could last around 2 weeks. But once troops are on the ground in close combat, military missions seldom go as planned.
Hamas officials today said Israel would, quote, pay for launching this offensive, which is continuing as we speak. Just during that report, we heard several loud strikes just on the outskirts of Gaza City.
Yeah.
Natalie?
Do take care of yourself there. Richard Engel in Gaza, thanks so much. Here a little bit closer to home, an entire town in Washington state has been evacuated this morning because of a massive wildfire that has destroyed at least 35 homes in the area. Some 650 people in Pateras were forced to leave as the flames moved closer. Officials are also evacuating a hospital in a nearby town. The fire's burned more than 18,000 acres so far, and it has shut down highways in the area. And firefighters are mainly battling the flames from the air. Some incredible video this morning out of North Carolina where a meteor was seen flashing across the sky. A software developer captured this on his cell phone Thursday night while driving in Raleigh. And it was spotted across several states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey. You see it right there off in the left-hand corner.
We do. I hate to be a judger, but was he driving and rolling?
You don't want to encourage that behavior.
Mounted on the dashboard.
Let's just pretend that it was. Nat, thank you. And by the way, we're so glad you're on solid ground.
Me too.
After your big trip yesterday.
Let us get a check of the weather. Whoa!
Oh, hey now. Hiya, folks. No neck of the woods here.
Carson sitting over here. Al's down in Washington, going to interview the First Lady a little later today. Al, good morning to you.
Good morning, and watch it, voice boy. Don't get any ideas. Anyway, we're going to be talking about her Let's Move initiative. We'll bring you that on Monday. But in the meantime, Super Typhoon Ramasan, less than 30 miles north of Haikou, China. You can watch the eye move right over there, just pushing through. It's got 155 mile per hour winds, west-northwest to 14 mile per hour movement. It will eventually make its way just between Nanning and Vietnam by early Saturday morning as a Category 2 storm. It's going to cause a lot of damage. We're going to keep watching that. Now, closer to home, Austin, Texas, and parts of Texas, a real mess. Look at this flooding. 8 inches of rain in some areas in 6 hours, causing massive problems. The flooding is starting to subside, but boy, they're still seeing heavy rain. Texas on into Louisiana and the Gulf Coast. As we look at the radar, you can see those heavy thunderstorms between Corpus Christi, San Antonio, heavy rain making its way into Louisiana. We're looking for another 2 to 4 inches of rain over the next 24 hours, and we're going to be watching this closely as well. We're going to get to your local forecast coming up in the next 30 seconds. And we're going to have more on those hot temperatures and the wildfire danger in the Pacific Northwest coming up a little bit later.
Morning, everyone. Nice to have you along on a busy Friday morning. As you know, this fighting has been raging for months on the border between Ukraine and Russia. Just this week, Ukrainian military planes allegedly were shot down by Russian-backed separatists. A lot of people are asking this morning, why was a commercial airliner flying over this area at all? NBC's Tom Costello covers aviation for us. He's been looking into that part of the story. Tom, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. The rebels had warned Ukrainian military planes not to fly over rebel-held territory, but there was no warning against civilian passenger planes flying through Ukrainian airspace. Still, U.S. airlines were warned in April by the FAA to avoid the region following the Russian invasion of Crimea. Now, the FAA is expanding that order.
In our industry, you would not get permission. You wouldn't be able to fly a flight plan over an area which is dangerous.
But 4 months ago, the FAA prohibited U.S. airlines from flying near the Crimea region of Ukraine and the Black Sea because of the fighting. Late Thursday, the FAA expanded the order, prohibiting U.S. flight operations until further notice in the airspace over eastern Ukraine due to recent events and the potential for continued hazardous activities. Within hours of the shootdown, Ukrainian airspace was empty of all but military aircraft as foreign airlines suspended flights through the area. Meanwhile, civilians have already been photographed walking through the wreckage, contaminating any evidence. In recent weeks, Russian-backed separatists have shot down several Ukrainian military planes. If they fired the missile that brought down Flight 17, American experts doubt outside investigators will be welcome.
The political situation complicates the investigation and the government's role because everybody has a motive to lie. If separatists shot down the plane, they want to hide or destroy evidence, keep or maintain the black boxes, and never let the truth come out.
Intercepted telephone conversations and initial tweets from Russian-backed separatists suggest they could be responsible. Former head of the NTSB says she'd be reluctant to send U.S. teams into the area.
I would be very concerned if I was anyone sending my people in there that they need to be safe.
Still, in Malaysia, the Prime Minister is calling for a thorough, independent investigation.
An international team must have full access to the crash site, and no one should interfere with the area or move any debris, including the black box.
So, as of this morning, U.S. sources say an NTSB team is not on its way. And again, the concern would be for their safety. This is an active war zone. Not even Ukrainian authorities are on the scene yet. And this question of objectivity is really one that everybody is asking. If the rebels shot this plane down and the plane is in rebel-held territory and they have the black boxes, could there be any independent investigation? By the way, the black boxes, guys, may really not be of much use because they know what brought the plane down. The question is who fired the missile.
Yeah, incredibly complex situation there. Tom, thank you very much.
Greg Feith is a former NTSB senior investigator and an NBC News aviation expert. Greg, good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you, Matt.
This plane was flying at above 30,000 feet at a constant speed on a regular course. Military analysts that I've read have said that anybody operating this missile battery should have known this was not posing a threat. Let's go over it one more time. Does a civilian aircraft present any kind of a signature to radar that's different from a military aircraft?
Not in this particular case, Matt. There is a data tag that, of course, air traffic control uses to identify that airplane. But in this particular instance, depending on the level of sophistication that the missile operator uses, there is no differentiation in signature. And again, we don't know why this airplane was targeted, whether it was an errant shot or they were targeting something else. So in this case, this airplane did deviate from its prescribed route, presumably due to weather, and that's a big issue right there, and that will be part of the investigation to find out why they went so far south.
Yeah, but trying to understand what might have happened on that plane, and this 777 did not have the kind of radar that a military plane might have that could detect an incoming missile, so they wouldn't have known what was about to hit them until it hit them.
Absolutely, Matt, and that's the big thing. We've seen this in the past.
Greg Feith. Greg, thank you very much. Greg's point is a really valid one. It matters less about the black boxes and the pieces of debris. It matters a whole lot more finding out where that missile was fired
And
from.
for that, it's about the U.S. intelligence resources that are trained on that area. Let's get a check of the weather now. Mr. Roker finds himself in Washington this morning for a good reason. Hey, Al.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We're going to be talking to the First Lady a little bit later about Let's Move and kids eating healthy meals. But in the meantime, out west, where they grow a lot of the food we eat, it is rough. And we've got more hot weather to talk about. We were looking at temperatures that are getting up into the 90s. We're also going to be looking at lots of heat, temperatures way above normal. Nikki? We're looking at more heat and humidity. We've got hot, dry conditions, 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts, locally critical fire conditions. It happens to be my young man's 12th birthday, so he is here with me, helping me out. So, all
Go,
right,
Nick.
Oh, Nikki photobombing Al's weather.
Oh,
he's a birthday boy. He can do anything he wants today, Al.
That's right. It's his birthday, so he gets to spend it at the White House. All right, that's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. And that's your latest weather.
I can't believe how big Nikki is.
I know. Almost taller than you, Al.
Hey, Nick, come here. They want to see how tall you are. Yeah, it's luckily Nikki takes after Deborah's side of the family. Her dad was 6'2", whereas I'm from a very short, stocky people.
Happy birthday, Nick.
Happy birthday.
Everybody said happy birthday.
Pretty cool.
All right, Al, thank you so much. Well, coming up, we'll continue to follow this big story this morning. More on MH Flight 17 coming up.
Also, we're going to go live to Malaysia, where family members of those on board are turning to each other for comfort after the tragedy. That's right after these messages. Remember that back in March, Malaysia Air Flight 370 disappeared. It's believed to have crashed in the southern Indian Ocean. To this day, no wreckage from that plane has ever been found. Families of the victims continue to search for answers, and now another group will endure a very similar agony. NBC's Miguel Almaguer has made his way to Kuala Lumpur, which is where this flight was headed. Miguel, good morning to you.
Matt, good morning. Government officials just wrapped up a press conference here, but not a lot of new information was released. But this is a place where folks have been gathering, trying to learn new information about those 295 people aboard that plane who came from countries all over the world.
One by one, family members arrived at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. They came here looking for answers, but instead, inside this terminal, only heartbreak and overwhelming grief. The arrivals board still showed flight MH17. Perhaps the only comfort for these families now is each other.
I would like to offer my deepest sympathies and condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. Our heart go out to those who have been affected by this tragedy.
Family members expecting a loved one on the Malaysian Airlines flight were escorted into a private room.
Pray for them, and then it's really bad to hear the news.
The scene at this airport today, an eerie reminder of what happened here just 4 months ago. This is where families gathered after Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 went missing over the Indian Ocean. Danica Weeks' husband, Paul, was one of the 239 aboard.
It's just so shocking, and I can't believe that, they've lost another plane. And look, we need to know why, and I just hope Malaysia are more forthcoming with the families on this, and, than they have been with us.
Today, the Malaysian Prime Minister wasted no time speaking out, appearing on television before dawn.
This is a tragic day in what has already been a tragic year for Malaysia. The flight's passengers and crew came from many different countries. But today, regardless of nationality, we are all united in grief.
Grief etched on the faces of so many here in Kuala Lumpur yet again.
This morning we have learned one woman, Kayleen Mann, lost her brother in the Malaysian airline flight back in March. She lost her stepdaughter in this tragedy. Matt.
It's unbelievable, Miguel Almaguer. Miguel, thank you very much. Up next, Carson's in the Orange Room. He's got a closer look at how millions of people around the world turn to social media to learn more about this story. We'll check in with Carson in a second, right after these messages.
That's right, Savannah. Social media provides so much insight. The second news break, so many impactful images being shared. Hashtag MH17, 1.6 million tweets and growing. Images everywhere. Some of them had to be blurred out. Here's a soldier overlooking the crash site. Let's go through just a few of the most retweeted tweets yesterday. This was in Katie Tur's piece. This image here of the plane, taken a picture of the plane by the passenger before he walked in, saying, should it disappear, this is what it looks like. A lot of people sending that out yesterday. Another image was what we saw earlier also. This was retweeted almost 3,000 times. The radar image of Ukraine after the accident, the airspace there, as you can see, cleared. And finally, of course, this story being told this morning, newspapers all over the world. And we obviously will have much more on this coming up, guys.
All right, Carson, thank you so much. At the top of the next hour, we are going to have a lot more, get an update on the latest developments in this coverage. And then, of course, we'll take a turn and things will lighten up a bit in our next half hour. We've got some rock stars to
Yeah, we
talk
got
to.
that guy right there, Sir Mick Jagger. He is talking about a new passion project. I've interviewed him a lot over the years, have rarely seen him as excited about anything as the story of James Brown.
And the crowd growing outside for Grammy winner Jason Mraz will perform live on the Plaza. That's all coming up after your local news and weather.